Hello and welcome to Mindful Living, where we explore the art of living with the intention, balance, and inner peace. I am Avik, your host, guiding you through conversations on health, meditation, mental well being, mindfulness, and the mind body connection. Each episode features expert insights to help you grow, heal, and thrive. So, take a deep breath, relax, and join us on this journey to a more mindful and fulfilling life. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast, where we explore topics that help you cultivate awareness, balance, and purpose in your daily life. In today's episode, we dive deep into an issue that is affecting millions of men around the world: mental and emotional health, the loneliness epidemic, and how joining a men's group can set men up for greater success, fulfillment, and connection. Our guest today is Jason Lanch, a men's embodiment coach, group facilitator, and evolutionary guide. Jason has spent over 20 years helping men awaken to their deeper purpose in life and relationships. He's also a certified No More Mr. Nice Guy coach and has worked with many influential figures in the field of men's work. His mission is to create spaces where men can grow, thrive, find support, and shed outdated paradigms of masculinity that no longer serve them. And in today's episode, Jason shares why every man should consider joining a men's group and how doing so can radically improve their mental health and relationships. So, Jason, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jason, loneliness, of course, it has become a major issue, especially among men, and it can have devastating effects on mental and emotional health. Why do you think so many men are struggling with loneliness today?
Yeah, there's so many reasons for this, some of which are cultural in terms of what we expect men to be in the world and what a lot of us men are taught from a young age, both by other men and sometimes the women in our lives, that on one level, there's this idea of what we call the man box, which is this kind of box men are expected to fit into. And if we don't, we're not considered men. And
Right.
some of the very common, for better or worse, some of the very common traits here that we see that demand us to be true in the man box are like: never show weakness, don't be vulnerable, don't be sad, don't cry, be
Yes.
tough. Other men are competition, work harder. If sex is available to you, take it.
Mhm.
All these different messages we get from a young age, oftentimes as boys, and that have an impact on us. And in a lot of ways, what I talk about, teach us as boys and then later as men to not be in our bodies, right? So when you think of a young child being taught, stop crying, you're fine.
Right.
What we're really teaching that young boy is, hey, whatever's happening for you inside, ignore that. Override it with your head. And then we put boys into, schooling systems, which, they have a lot of pros, but turns out young boys need to move, right? We have a lot of energy in our body and we're kinesthetic learners. And when we're taught, sit still, again, what the message we get is whatever's happening in your body, override it with your head. And then we become young adolescents and teenagers, and we get into that kind of locker room culture that's so big for many boys of competition and being tough and not showing weakness. And boys perpetuate this against each other. And boys will bully other boys if they're weak or vulnerable or share something they care about.
Right.
And this kind of just keeps going up the chain. Then we become an adults and we're rewarded for, hey, can you work 80 hours a week? Doesn't matter what it's doing to your body or your relationship or your health. The most important thing is how hard can you work? Or can you do this extreme sport, for entertainment that's going to destroy your body? Or, it's changed quite a bit, but traditionally, it was men's bodies that were sent off to war or
Right.
did the really dangerous or toxic jobs. And just in a sense, there's been this kind of cultural force that says men shouldn't be in our bodies. We get rewarded when we're not. In fact, we sometimes get paid more money and are taught from a young age. And lo and behold, what happens when you're not in your body is you're also disconnected from your emotions, because our emotions start as sensations in our bodies. So men and boys from a young age are taught to not be in our bodies and taught to not feel and to not even know what we're feeling. And so when we don't know how to identify what we're feeling, we don't know how to share it, for one, so it feels really isolating. And then for a lot of men, we turn to substances to try to make ourselves feel better, whether that's alcohol, weed, porn, sex, food, overworking, to try to help ourselves feel better on the inside. Now, we combine that with just kind of what's happening culturally, right? A lot of our kind of societal communal structures have broken down. I'm here in the US, and in particular, there's this hyper prioritization of everything being private. The dream is to have your own house, not near anyone, in a sense. And we're wired as human beings to be communal and relational creatures, right? And that's slowly been eroded. And with technology now, it can feel like we're connecting to other people, but we're not. And we can live alone, essentially. We can work from home. We can order our food and our groceries from Amazon and never even have to leave the house and interact with people. And so when you combine all that, this is a problem. Loneliness is happening to everyone, but I think men are just particularly vulnerable to it because of these additional cultural pressures that teach us to always keep everything inside. And particularly if you're in pain, don't show it, just be tough and kind of keep it at a surface level. And then the way most men are taught to relate to each other, if they do, is through what I call triangulation, which means me and you, my buddy, we have our attention on a third thing: a sporting game, a movie, politics, something, right? Where our attention, we connect to each other by talking about a third thing. Lo and behold, what that can lead to is, I might have men in my life, but feel very alone because none of them even know my wife is leaving me right now, or that I just got a cancer diagnosis and I have no idea how to tell them that or bring that forward. And so us men are just very vulnerable for a lot of reasons that are just coming to a head right now, where since 1990, it's the percentage of men with at least 6 close friends fell by half. So it's like only 20% of men these days feel like they even have 6 close friends. And single men in particular fare the worst, where here in America, 1 in 5 American men who are unmarried and not in a romantic relationship report not having any close friends. And this really starts to catch up to us, that, again, it is unfortunately changing a little bit, but traditionally, statistically, suicide has mostly been men, right? It's one of the most common causes of death for men, and it's just going up over the years. And so men feel isolated, they feel alone, and they've never been taught that they can actually learn to connect with each other. And this loneliness thing, right? It's not just something you and I have made up. Like, they've done real research, and men who report loneliness and isolation, they die faster. It's just as deadly as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day or being morbidly obese. Heart disease comes faster, and we have health challenges faster when we feel alone.
That's true. That's true. That's really eye-opening, Jason. And again, breaking the lone wolf mentality. Many men still feel the pressure to go through life alone, as you explained very well, and believing that asking for help is a sign of weakness. So How can joining a men's group help break that lone wolf mentality and foster more connection and support?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And, I'll start with even that term, right? A lot of guys I know, they use the term lone wolf as
Yeah.
something they're proud of. But the truth is, when you actually look at nature, the lone wolf is the wolf that was kicked out of the pack. And that wolf will not survive as long. It will actually die sooner when it's not part of the pack. So it's not a point of pride. It actually, in some sense, it's in nature, it's a punishment, because wolves together, they live longer. They thrive more. And I think that's part of the big shift men get to experience coming into men's group is, wow, other men don't just have to be my competition. They don't just have to be my enemies, but they can be my allies. And the more connected we feel in life, the more resilient we become. Meaning, when really challenging stuff happens to us, it doesn't knock us over in the same way, because we have somewhere to land with people who can hold us, who can support us, who can love us. And as men, sometimes, hold us accountable and call us forward when we're enacting things in our lives that are hurting ourselves or other people. A men's group's a place where we get to kind of break up that culture, and where men can have this firsthand experience of, wow, being vulnerable and bringing myself forward is not weak, it's actually strong. The men who live the most in fear are actually the men who are afraid to share their emotions. Men who have gone the other direction and are like, I'm sad right now, so I'm going to come grieve with my brothers, or I'm feeling furious at this thing that happened, and I'm going to come share my anger in a safe way where no one feels danger because of how I'm sharing it, because I have somewhere intelligent that I'm bringing it with consent, or where I'm allowed to bring my fears or panic or grief or disgust, whatever that might be. What I quickly see in men over and over and over again is the relief that comes from when they realize, wow, I don't have to hold it all inside. And in fact, the men I see in front of me who are bringing it forward, I actually trust them more. They feel strong to me. I feel more relaxed around them. And it starts to rewire this whole system men have of, wait a second, instead of suffering in pain alone, I can bring myself forward to be accepted in community and in love, frankly, and where I don't have to hold it all together all the time. And lo and behold, the more we learn to just turn towards our emotions inside of ourselves and in a group, the less power they have over us, where we don't get knocked into depression for days, weeks, or years, and we don't feel totally contracted and burdened and stressed out in our lives, where instead we get to bring this thing forward. And I could tell you, I've unfortunately keep learning this lesson over and over and over, despite the fact I've been in this work 20 years and I teach it. Sometimes I'll catch myself and I'll be in a men's group and I'll finally bring something forward that I was scared to feel. And turns out it took maybe 2 or 3 minutes to fully feel it in the group. And I had been spending maybe 6 months of my life avoiding it, trying to not feel that grief or not feel that anger or not feel that frustration. And so lo and behold, when we have a safe place to do that with other men, we become more powerful. And what I mean by powerful is just we're able to move towards the things we want in our lives. And having a good men's group really enables that for us, because we feel more connected, more alive.
Definitely. And for men who are feeling stuck in life or struggling with their mental and emotional well being, what are some practical steps or tools they can start using right now to begin thriving again?
Yeah, for one, stop avoiding. So we fall prey to this kind of awful belief that if I just avoid emotion, it'll go away, but it doesn't. It's kind of a platitude, but we use it because it's meaningful. Emotion, energy in motion. Emotion is supposed to move through our bodies and cause some kind of reaction. It's a response to some kind of stimulus in our environment. And when we disengage or choose not to feel or numb ourselves to it with substances, we're actually preventing a process from happening inside of ourselves. And we're not as engaged with life. So the more you can start to turn towards your emotions in the moment, the more your life is actually going to change. Another man I work with once told me, I loved this, emotions are a call to action. And so if we're avoiding our emotions, we're actually not getting the signal to whatever action needs to be taken in our life. But when we allow it to move through us, our lives start to change pretty powerfully. So turning towards your emotions is really powerful. And then going deeper with other men in your life. So what's really important here is not waiting for them to go first, but being the one that says, hey, do you want to meet up, for 30, 40 minutes Friday night and just talk about life? And to actually then share, to reveal what is happening inside you in your life right now. And what I found is oftentimes one of the greatest acts of leadership men can do these days is go first. Be vulnerable. And then suddenly the floodgates open with the other men we're with who are like, wow, I didn't even know how to talk about this, but suddenly all of this content comes forward and they feel comfortable and they feel permission to share it. And almost inevitably, after interactions like that, most men report feeling more free, more relaxed, more energized, and more hopeful. So you can start turning towards your emotions and start taking your connections with other men deeper, even if you don't have a men's group. And then, this is just particularly to the men too. If you haven't already, go to therapy. We go to the gym to work out our bodies. All therapy is it's how we work out our minds and our hearts. It doesn't mean you're broken, doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It's how we cross-train our nervous systems. And you wouldn't think a man is weak for going to the gym to keep himself healthy, would you? So why would you think a man is weak going to therapy? It's just a way to work these different parts of our bodies.
Lovely. And you also talk about how men's groups can improve their intimate relationships. So, can you explain how working on emotional health in a group setting helps men show up more fully in their partnerships?
Yeah, I would say, three key things here. One of which is for a lot of men, because of all the cultural stuff we talked about, sometimes the only place they feel permission to be emotional is with their intimate partner, with their wife or their spouse. And that puts a lot of pressure on that relationship. And sometimes it can be a lot for a partner to handle it when you have no one else supporting you as a man. And suddenly I'm that man's partner and they just unload something on me. And I'm like, wow, I don't know what to do with this. And I'm scared because if I need to take care of myself, what are you going to do with this? And so it just puts a lot of stress on an intimate relationship when it's our only emotional outlet. Then we couple that with what I would say are two other big problems for a lot of men, one of which their partners sometimes say, I want you to be more vulnerable, right? I want to feel you more. I want to feel your heart more.
Yes.
And sometimes a man stumbles into that. But then, like I said, because he has no other support in his life, if he's like, I'm really scared, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job and everything might break apart. That could be intense for a partner to hold simultaneously. And sometimes the very partners that ask us to be more vulnerable, when we bring that forward as men, it actually scares them and they don't know what to do with it. And then we feel doubly wounded as men because we did finally bring it forward and our partner was just a little rattled by it. Then the other big thing I would say is for a lot of men, they come to me and I was this way. Someone asks them like, how are you feeling? What are you feeling? They can't even name it. We just don't actually have the skill set, what we would call interoception, that awareness of our inner world to be able to know and label what we're feeling and to be able to share it. And so a lot of times why we don't share in our relationships is because we just haven't had the toolkit given to us to name what's happening. Yeah, my chest is feeling really tight right now. Turns out I'm really angry at how my boss talked to me, right? When a man can learn to do that, it's often a huge relief to his partners. Like, oh, okay, you know what's going on inside yourself. It can be extremely distressing to partners when they can, let's say, they can feel their man is upset or angry or sad, and they ask him, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" "No, I'm not." And they're like, "Whoa, yes, you are," but you're not even aware of it. That's kind of scary. That doesn't feel very safe. So a men's group, it gives us somewhere else to bring our emotional selves, so it doesn't fall solely on our intimate partner. That then changes often the experience partners have of us when we do share it, because they can feel we're held in a bigger context of men around us. And in men's group, it's where we can actually build the skill set and capacity to know what's happening inside of us, because a good group of men are going to help sharpen us as men and get us really clear on what our actual direct felt body experience is. And then once we know that, it's much easier for us to come back out into the world. And it also just gives us somewhere to go as men, where we get connected, we get energized, we get bonded with other men. And lo and behold, we need that. No relationships don't work when it really just collapses into me and you with each other all the time. The most robust, healthy relationships I know of, both partners have a life outside of that. And a lot of men let that go when they get into a marriage or long-term relationship. They let go of all the passions and relationships and hobbies that made them attractive in the first place. So a men's group's a way to kind of start to bring that back online, that I have somewhere I can go as a man to be emotional, to be scared, to be angry, to get connected, to just get back into myself along the presence of other men. So I tell every man I work with, an investment in other men in a men's group in your life is an investment in your next relationship. And also, something a men's group will do is they'll help you call you on your own stuff when it's yours and it's not your partner's. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into my group and maybe I'm upset with my partner about something. And then my men's group gives me honest feedback about, hey, yeah, we hear that. And you know what? Sounds like that might actually be a little bit more on your side than her side. And then I'm like, oh, wait, you're right. Now I can see it. And so instead of going home and having a fight with my partner, I get to go home and share with her in a way that brings us closer.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's really, really very healthy and positive. And before we wrap up, Jason, for those men who are hesitant or skeptical about joining a men's group, or they're just not aware, what would you say to them? How can they overcome the initial resistance and take that first step? Be mindful that, yes, I feel vulnerable. I can definitely ask for help.
Yeah, I would say, it sounds a little intense, but it's like your life often depends on it. There's what I see in a lot of men is we come into this world and it's like we have a certain level of credit on our body credit card, how hard we can work, how much we can push ourselves. And those bills start to come due, particularly kind of in our mid 40s and beyond, where holding all that stress inside will catch up to you as a man. Your body will fail you at some point in your life. And it's at that point you want to know who's around to catch me. Maybe not forever, but in the low points of life. And so in my own life, and many of the hundreds of men I've worked with, when they get into a group, their relationships get better, their physical health gets better, they make more money, people trust them more, and they feel more alive and present in their lives for their families, their communities, their work, etc. So it's not just woo-woo stuff. This is how we take care of ourselves as men these days. And like I said, being in a good group, it will make you more powerful. It will help you move towards those things in your life you want to move towards the most.
True. Great. That's really, really a very great and positive discussion, Jason. And if our listeners, especially men, if they want to connect with you uh, and understand how powerful, how helpful men's group can be and how this loneliness can be cured, can be prevented, of course, How can they do that?
Mhm. Yeah, best way to keep up with me if you like what you're hearing is you can visit my website, evolutionary.men. So it's not .com, it's .men. And on
Wow.
there, you'll find links to me on social media. You'll find my own podcast, Evolutionary Men, where I talk about this stuff every week. And there's the contact form where you can always reach out to me if you have questions about how do I find a group in my area or anything like that. I love supporting men in finding groups. It's part of my mission that every man should be in a men's group.
Great, great. Well, Jason, thank you so much for your insights and your advices on how men can take steps towards improving their mental health and also thriving through the support of a community. And it's really, really empowering and positive for all the men out there. So appreciate I'm very sure our listeners will have a lot of takeaways from this discussion. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor and pleasure.
Great. And listeners, if you want to learn more about Jason's work and also listen to his podcast and understand how great opportunities are out there, you definitely can refer the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And stay mindful, stay healthy. And until next time, this is your host, Sana, signing off.